Hello, my name is Colin. You're watching Clubland with me. This is the channel where I take you around little bits of London and tell you a bit about their history. Now, this week we are going to go around St James and Clubland, and this is part 3 of this walk. I'll be finished off here in St James's Place at the last walk, and I have to say the weather is nowhere near as nice, but let's see how we do, okay? Now, the more observant among you may have noticed that I'm wearing slightly different headgear than usual. And that's because I lost my Shakespeare's Gold baseball cap on the DLR between Greenwich and Stratford. So if any of you come across it, I'd like it back, please. But otherwise, let's get on with the walk. Okay. So as I say, we are in St James's Place. We're going to start having a look at some more of the famous or discreet gentlemen's clubs. Now, a lot of these clubs, especially up around here, we're getting towards the older ones. They started off as coffee houses, and that would have been places where famous people of the day, writers, politicians, and artists and everything, philosophers, political especially, would have got together and debated the great issues of the day, and then eventually the coffee clubs became, a number of them became these gentlemen's clubs. So this one that we are looking at, this is the Carlton Club. So, let's scroll up. Maybe a better look at it from the outside. You got the flag and everything. So basically, the Carlton Club was for a good 50 years the unofficial headquarters of the Conservative Party here in the UK. This club came about as a result of, if you remember in the second, what we mentioned, the Reform Club, and there was the Reform Act, and such was the, what's the word I'm after, the strong feeling about the Reform Act that it actually caused the birth of 2 clubs. So one of them was the Reform Club, which we saw, and this was the other one. So, like I say, this has been the sort of the main club for Conservative members of Parliament and MPs and people who think that way. And every leader of the Conservative Party automatically becomes a member. So whenever Margaret Thatcher became leader of the Conservative Party, and especially as it was when she won the election, she was made an honorary man. Now, given her disdain for many of the members of her own cabinet, I'm sure she would have took that particular honour with a pinch of salt. But this one used to be, the Carlton Club, it used to be round in Pall Mall with the rest of them, but it was bombed during World War II, and then it moved to here. And indeed, this one was bombed in the 1980s by the IRA. So it hasn't had much luck in that regard. The official headquarters now for the Conservative Party is elsewhere, but that was like sort of de facto headquarters for many years, even though it was a gentleman's club. And as I say, we're getting towards the very older ones now, including the big daddy of the clubs. So this is St James's Street, which has had a few famous residents actually die here. So Christopher Wren died here, I believe, as did Alexander Pope. And it was here in St James Street that a young Queen Elizabeth II came out and mixed among the masses. Whenever the end of the Second World War was announced, there was parties in the street, and she wrote in her diary about coming out to St James Street and mixing in with the people. And actually then going to see her mum and dad on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, waving to everybody. Now this is Blue Ball Yard. So there's 2 entrances here. This one was for carriages, and as I'll show you in a minute, there's one next to it for pedestrians. Now you can see, I'm trying not to sneeze here. You can see up in the top right there is an original gas lamp. Still got the gas lintels in it, so it's still using the original sort of fuel source. So it's called Blue Ball Yard because back in the 18th century there was a pub here called the Blue Ball. Then it got knocked down, and now it approaches the rear of the Stafford Hotel. And in the part 2, when we emerged from Green Park, we saw the front of that hotel. But there is a nice little mews here, and it's got some nice historical features. So you can see here these beautiful, little sort of rooms. At one point, this would have been the grooms to the horses would have lived up above, and then underneath was the stables. But they've now all been converted into sort of luxury suites named after famous horses. And underneath this hotel, there are a number of big, what were like wine cellars, and indeed it still does have a very healthy wine collection, but they've converted some of those into like dining halls and that sort of thing. And it's even reputed that there are tunnels from here that go all the way down towards St James's Palace at the bottom of the street. Don't know about the truth of that one, but I've read it in several articles. Maybe the tunnels were there, but they're sort of defunct now. But as I say, this is very nice little mews, very decorative, and I have absolutely no doubt very expensive to stay in. But I must say I wouldn't say no, given the chance. So you can see here you've got the two entrances. The one on the right was for, as I say, was for the carriages, and the one on the left is for pedestrians. So we're back on St James's Street. Up here. And we're going to see another couple of places. Numbers at 62. The thing about a lot of these clubs, they actually don't have numbers. They just started there. Now, one of the next ones we're looking at is Pratt's. So, again, you wouldn't even know it was here. But there is one little clue on the door. You can see on the brass sign there, it says Club and Office. And this one is called Pratt's. Oh, I'll just show you a nice little feature. I scroll down. How's it going off to say? You see just there, that is a boot scraper. So that in days gone by, when the streets were a bit muddier, and there would have been all sorts of stuff relating to animals on the roads and on the pavements, then you would have wanted to scrape your boots off before you went inside. I just had to turn that round because the camera went at a funny angle when I went down there, so there we go. So as I say, this is Pratt's. Now, Pratt's probably more of a dining club. I'll go back across so you get the whole picture. Probably more of a dining club than a gentleman's club. The big gentleman's clubs, more like country houses in the town, whereas this one, as I say, more of a dining club, only open in the evenings, and its origins stem from 1841. And you had the Duke of Beaufort, and him and his mates liked to go out, drinking and probably doing a bit of gambling and all the rest of it. And one night in 1841, they got a bit bored with going to all their usual places, and the Duke came and he wrapped up one of his servants called Pratt. I think it was William Pratt. Basically asked him to supply them with some booze and some food and all the rest of it, so they could sit and have a gas and continue on their evening's festivities. Well, the evening went well, and they did it, and then they came back the next night, and they did it again, and then they kept doing it, and then it basically became an official club. And as I say, it's called Props, named after the servant that supplied everything. So it is now still under the charge of a Duke, but no longer the Duke of Beaufort, now it's the Duke of Devonshire. So there we go. Now, this here, just out of curiosity, I think obviously one of the embassies, embassy of Equatorial Guinea. Okay, there we go. Different. And now, oh, he's reversing down. Okay. We got another interesting little place up here. Now the place in what do you call that? Terracotta? Or just brown? That is St James's Hotel. It says Hotel and Club, Mayfair. And very nice it is too. There's something about it. It's got one of those sort of Monsters house feels to it, doesn't it? It's got the turrets and everything. Very nice though. And up the top here was something, the first time I saw this I had no idea what the hell it was. But this, through this gateway, is Overseas House. As the home of the Royal Overseas League, world headquarters. And the Overseas League was basically something about, you know, trying to create comradeship, but under the sort of under the British Empire, so comradeship across the nations. I think it was created during, probably in the aftermath of the First World War, and obviously that's when we had the League of Nations as well. And I believe there is an annual art exhibition held here, at least there was, I'm assuming it's still going, for professional artists up to the age of 35, and you can come along and see the artworks. Not sure when it is, mind you, but this is, as it says, the Royal Overseas League. There is a plaque up there. I think I'll go and read the plaque. Vernon House was bought by the Overseas League in 1921 and is dedicated to the perpetual memory of those citizens of the British Empire who laid down their lives in the Great War and to the service of the ideals for which they died. So as I say, aftermath of the First World War, trying to promote friendship and comradeship. But I had no idea the thing even existed. I could be wrong. I sort of think, when I see it, I sort of think of glorified scouts, but probably, you know, with more money behind it. And just for a bit of architecture, I do love this building on the left, with all the Art Deco touches. Sort of the wavy lines at the front and the sort of designs of the iron grills. I had a look recently out of curiosity. You can get a place here for $4,650 a week. Absolute bargain. Now, on the left, we have one of the more famous clubs. It's like among those circles, shall we say. This is Brooks Club. Let's see what it looks like from the front. You can see they're very discreet. You know, they've got the big shutters and everything. A lot of the times when you come up, it's all sort of closed off. I believed in keeping with the sort of country house atmosphere. When you go in, there's a roaring fire in the sort of lobby and everything for a day like today when it's a bit fresh. I'll just show you a little feature here. Now these urns, see it says they're 1776. That's actually 2 years older than the club itself, because the club again moved from another one. They tended to move around the area initially until they settled, and the club moved here in 1778, and it's been here ever since. And again, you wouldn't know. This one was for the Whigs. Now the Whigs were basically aristocratic liberals, and this place was very famous for the gambling, not to mention the drinking, but especially the gambling that went on here. And some of the more famous politicians of the day used to come and sort of carouse here. One of the more famous ones was a guy called Charles James Fox. If you remember, for any of you that saw the Soho tour, we saw the pub which had been called the Intrepid Fox, that was named after him due to some dodgy sort of tactics that he pulled in trying to get re-elected. And this was where apparently he would spend the night, drinking and gambling, and then he would go down to Parliament and pull out some of the wittiest speeches in there. So he was obviously, he obviously at least had a brain on him. Now I'm looking for number 59. 60, so it'll be the next one up, and it's obviously been rebuilt. Just one thing to notice here. I just pull that up. You just see that crest. Just there. That is the crest that says that this is a supplier to the royal household. So it says, by appointment to His Majesty the King, Jewellers, Warwick's, London. Now, there was a big rush when Queen Elizabeth died. All those companies that had the official status of being suppliers to the royal household, it all cancelled because the Queen had died. They all had to get renewed, and there was a big rush to basically get them renewed in the name of the King. So obviously this is one of the ones that has made it since. Now I know at number 59, now that one says 60, so this must have been 59 at some point. And during the war, this was where Victor Rothschild, one of the banking family, and he was a banker, he was a scientist, and he played county cricket, and he jazz piano and everything. But it was here that he defused the bomb. He was in charge of I think it was MI5 at the time here, and one of their tasks was to try and stop the Germans, any sort of bombs being sent over disguised as something else, trying to take out top officials. And he actually defused a bomb that was found, that was brought into the office, and he found it, and he actually gave a running commentary of taking the relevant parts apart and defusing it, and for that he got the George Cross. But as I say, headquarters of MI5 during World War II. Now I'm going to go up to the top, because we have got the daddy of all clubs, and then we'll come back down the street on the other side. Okay, I think what I'll do, just to give you a decent view of it, maybe stay over on this side, maybe go halfway across. Ah, they're starting to put up the Christmas lights. See there? See the Christmas lights hanging up? Obviously not lit up yet, but they're getting ready. And we're still in October. Now, go. I think I could get across here now. What's he doing? Okay, so this one, this lovely building, and again, you know, there's nothing to tell you that it's there. Okay, look, all the shutters, everything, and that's not because it's a Sunday. It's basically like this a lot of the time. So this is White's, the most exclusive and the oldest of the clubs. This one dates from 1693. It did have a short spell starting just down the street, where we'll be going to shortly, and it was a chocolate house. So you had coffee houses, and then eventually you had tea houses, but you had chocolate houses as well. And like I say, places for debate and you know, if you were new to London and you wanted to meet a famous individual and probably try and get a job by getting to know someone, you'd have went to a coffee house, listen to them debate, and if you like what they said, engage in a conversation. So this is White's. Now, to tell you how exclusive this is, there was the story of William Pitt the Elder, who was Prime Minister a couple hundred years ago, and one of his friends asked if there was any chance of him putting him forward to be a member of White's club. Now, this is a club for the landed gentry on the conservative side. And William Pitt said to him, well, I'll tell you what, he said, we're going to be looking for some more barons and some more viscounts at the end of the year. Would you be happy with being a viscount instead? That was how exclusive and how difficult it was to become a member of White's. So some of the tech pro types and all the rest of it that are today that have got all the money, they might have the money, but they wouldn't be seen as having the breeding or the class for these sorts of places. Now, this is Beretta's, and it's not Beretta, the TV show that I remember as a kid. So this is a shop and outfitter store, obviously for clothing and looks like sort of hunting gear and all that sort of thing. And it says since 1526. Now, it may have been around since 1526, but not in this spot, because the claim to be the oldest shop in London is a bit further down this street, and this isn't it. So I want to do some nice flat caps. I'm not sure if that's as good as my head were, but so it's Beretta's. And here we have Davidoff Fine Cigars. Now this street up here, which we will come to later, and I think on the next tour, is German Street, which is known for its like bespoke tailors and nightclubs and that sort of thing. Mostly for the bespoke tailoring. So while we're down here, now I did say that White's was originally located a bit further down the street, and that's where we're going to come to next. That's the last of our clubs, and Brooks and White's would be like the three most what's the word it would be after, got the most sort of kudos. If you remember one of those, then you're well in. So this is Boodles. Let me see, can I get out here without getting run over? Hold on. Well, I can at the minute, okay. So this is Boodles, and this is where White's used to be. And it started about 20-30 years later. But Boodles was renamed Blades in the James Bond novels. and this is where James Bond would have been the member. But again, very exclusive. And as you can see, all curtains shut, everything just sort of shutting out the outside world. Now, I'm just going to nip round here because I've spotted something as I was walking up, and since I was thinking about documenting the open places and the sort of sculptures and the green spaces in London, at least in central London, because across central and greater London there are supposed to be 3,000 of these open spaces, green spaces, and I just thought, whilst I'm here wandering about, I'll try and document as many of them as I can. Who knows, maybe sometime in the future when they're all gone, somebody might appreciate seeing them all. So let's see what this sculpture is called. I would imagine this would be designated as one of the open spaces. And this thing, it looks a little bit like sort of a golf ball crossed with a walnut. Now, Charles Hadcock, Palindrome 1. That's what it says down there. Palindrome 1 2023, bronze encounter. Okay. On this one it says Charles Hadcock Phrases 2025 painted aluminium. Alright. Obviously my brain isn't wired to appreciate this sort of stuff. I'll just slope down a bit. Charles Hadcock, Edian 2 2020 glazed terracotta. Alright, that's what you call it. Fair enough. So as I say, all part of my grand master plan to document as many of these areas as I can whilst I'm walking around. But let's continue with the main tour. Not sure how I'm doing for time. I know I just want to get down the bottom of the street. Yeah, not too bad.
If you want to go straight up.
You know, people ask me about wandering around London with a camera and talking to myself, and they say, you know, people not look at you. And I just say, well, the trick is not to look ridiculous. You know, people just get used to it. So this is a cigar merchant with what these days I would suggest are a tad politically incorrect statues. But hey, I suppose they're of their time. see a few more famous sort of suppliers, if you will. That place over there, Chutney Mary, I was reading yesterday actually, apparently at one point this was a very famous fish restaurant from a French lady that came over during the war, and Churchill asked her specifically not to close it and move away, and I think it was there until she died. Now it's called Chutney Mary, so no doubt an Indian place. Ah, yes, alright, here we go. Globes. So here's the first of our places. So you can see up above, it's got the Royal Crest. Appointment to His Majesty the King, bootmaker John Lobb Limited. Now Lobb's is very special. There was a documentary, you probably find it on YouTube, but it showed you what they go through when they make the shoes. So you can get a pair of handmade shoes here. Starting price would be about £5,000. They are, like I say, every part of them is handmade and have different specialists to make the different bits and then put it all together. It takes about 6 months to get your first pair of shoes, because you get a last made, and obviously a last is like the model of your measurements of your foot size, all ankle size, all the things that they take. And they make the last, and apparently there's some 30,000 of them, going all the way back to people like the Duke of Wellington and Churchill and Lord knows who else. Loads of famous people have had shoes made here. And they now do sort of like not bespoke ones made specifically for you, but just very, very good, very fine crafted shoes that you can buy sort of online, starting at about £2,000. So, but it takes them weeks if not months just to make the shoes, because like I say, everything is made specifically by hand. And in the documentary there was a guy, I think he was like a Texan or something, and whenever he got his bonuses or whatever, in whatever line of work he was in, he says some people go out and buy a Ferrari, he says I like my shoes. And they have a big set of scales where you can actually weigh people. What the purpose of this was, I have no idea, but Napoleon III was weighed in there, Vivian Leigh, the actress, was weighed there, I think Wellington as well. What the purpose of weighing somebody was, I have no idea. Let's see. We have some pictures. In fact, there is the king. I would suggest that was when he was a prince, although he is with the current queen, Camilla. But they look a bit younger. So everything very old-fashioned, all still handmade. So that's Lobb's. Now I was saying about the oldest shop, and this is the one that is reputedly the oldest, and even just the amount of paint on the door will give you a hint of just how old it is. Founded 1676. So whether it's the oldest continuous shop in the same location, but like that door, it just looks like it's the original, and it's just been covered in layers and layers of paint over the years. But this is the hat shop, obviously, millinery. So if you were going to a royal event or a Royal Ascot for the racing or whatever it might be, this is where you would come and get your hat. I used to work with someone whose other half, she bought him a flat hat from here, and one of the flat caps. I dread to think how much that cost. But that's Lock & Co. 1676, and recognised by most articles as being the oldest shop in London. Oh, I like the old, see the old big door knocker there? And then we have another famous one. So this is the wine merchants, Berry Brothers and Rudd, which has been, says established in the 17th century. I think it's been here, I might be wrong, but I read somewhere, it was sort of late 1800s or something like that. that became a sort of wine. Well, it's established in the 17th. See, they all claim to be old because it's very lots more kudos that way. So I would need to look into that one a bit more. But I have read that it was only here as a wine business because it was previously 1698. It was a place opened by the widow Bourne, and it was a shopkeeper's then. It wasn't specialising in wine, so that's maybe what this refers to. And then, it was the son-in-law took it over whenever the widow Bourne died, and then eventually it became specialising in wine. So, how does a place this size survive against all the big wine places? Apart from the fact that these ones have very old, very antique wines, very special, they do have one other thing in their favour, and that is they are the place that make cutty sort whiskey. If you're familiar with cutty sort whiskey, this is where it's done from, and I think it has a big market abroad. But as well as that, this place is very deceptive. If you were to go in and ask for one of the older, more unusual wines, the man behind the counter would go and he would disappear, because he would go down into a cellar, and the cellar apparently reaches down towards the palace there. So there's a big cellar. They've got guts of 250,000 bottles of wine stored, dating back well a couple of hundred years, if not older, but definitely 1800 stuff. And it's all stored down there, and apparently the air, the temperature and everything is just perfect for the storing of wine. And that's why what looks like a relatively small wine merchants can compete with a lot of the bigger names that are out there. Now, it's got one other little oddity to it. Well, wanting people coming out, we shall let them come out. I'll let you have a look at St James's Palace while we're waiting. Okay. Okay. No, go ahead. So one other thing you can see here is this, and it says Texas legation. In this building was a legation for the ministers from the Republic of Texas to the Court of St James, 1842 to 45. And this is erected by the Anglo-Texan Society. And what happened was Berry Brothers and Rudd rented out a space to some of the sort of Tegs and delegates. So Texas at the time wasn't part of the United States. It was an independent place, republic, and like all sort of countries or states, it was looking for legitimacy. And how do you get legitimacy? You have to get recognised by other countries. And that's the reason why I can't call my house, apart from the fact I don't own it, I can't call my house a country in its own right, because you have to get recognised by other countries. So they were here, obviously lobbying the British Parliament, and maybe the royalty and everything else, for the recognition of Texas as an independent state. And they rented a space here in Berry Brothers and Rudd. So there you go, from the Alamo to Berry Brothers on St James Street. There you go. And when you go up here, you have this lovely little walkway.
You know when we buy wines? We buy wines from this shop here.
That's a shop.
This is a shop next door. This is a square. It's the square. You know what square is? We don't know.
And there we go, Pickering Place. Now, Berry Brothers on 3 of the 4 sides. I'll see how much of this I can get for you. So, I just spin this around. The writer Graham Greene used to live here for a spell, I think possibly during the war. It is a very quaint little square. This is a restaurant that's open, especially during the summer months. You come around here, the awning will be out, there'll be tables out the front. And it looks very picturesque, very, summery, I suppose is the word for it. I would imagine that those are sort of healthy food that I really can't stand. So we have this nice sundial in the centre here, and I'm not sure who this is. It's obviously been left here at some point in the past. Now, legend has it that this was the spot of the last sword fight, the duel in London. And you can see why. It's the perfect size, you know. Sort of an enclosed space. You can imagine a couple of guys going at it with swords. Maybe their mates, you know, standing around the edge cheering them on. But this is supposedly where that happened. It's a lovely little spot. I am very aware that when I come around on a day like today, it's a bit grey and, you know, a bit more typical British weather, and it's not blazing sunshine. It doesn't look as appealing as the other tours I've done when it's lovely and sunny. But trust me, this is somewhere you would want to visit. It's a lovely little spot, and obviously it is much nicer when it's sunny. Now then, that is the end of part 3. I hope you're enjoying the walks. If you are, then you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in part 4. I suppose I should mention while I'm here the ears. The reason for the ears. Whenever I put this on YouTube, it will be the Weekend of Children in Need, which is a big charity event once a year that is hosted by the BBC, and basically people all around the country do very silly things to try and raise money for charity for underprivileged children. So although this site doesn't actually raise any money on YouTube because it doesn't have enough followers, if you want to contribute, I'll put the link underneath in the description. Okay, but as ever, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope we'll see you in part 4. Assuming it doesn't start raining. Okay, bye.